Where Saturn is in your chart is the key to understanding what lessons you are here to learn. This becomes more prevalent if you have Saturn ruling your life path, if you were a Capricorn rising or Aquarius rising. Traditionally, Saturn rules Aquarius. Modern Uranus rules Aquarius. Regardless if you do modern or traditional, the traditional still has weight there, and I do believe that you need to look at both. Understanding what your lessons are through astrology just genuinely gives you a key. Like, it's not going to fix your life, it's not going to get you from A to B without putting kind of effort in, but it will really, really give you a light, and it will give you a clear understanding of what you need to learn. And it also will help you in areas where you feel like you've been disconnected or confused or misaligned. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katerina. I am in the midst of creating something that has just put a lot of emphasis on your chart ruler and what your chart ruler wants from you, and also looking at the polarity of where that chart ruler is within your chart, as well as, aspects and other parts of the chart that give more insight. But for now, I just really want to talk about your chart ruler. And I'm a Capricorn rising. I have written a whole Saturn workbook to help you understand what your lesson is and what Saturn wants from you, regardless of whether Saturn is in your chart and you are not a Capricorn or Aquarius rising. But also, if you are one of those, I have like a whole section of the book that is dedicated to you for that, and it helps you understand what Saturn really wants for you. So you can do this regardless of who your chart ruler is, if you just look at your chart ruler and where they are in your chart. But specifically for this video, I'm going to be talking about Saturn. I talk about this in my workbook, and if you're interested in just understanding it very clearly, I'll link that below. It's in the description box. But if you want to work it out for yourself, and if you want to take time with that, Saturn is a planet that in traditional astrology was the furthest from the naked eye. So they only discovered Pluto, Neptune, and Uranus later. So in traditional Hellenistic astrology, Saturn was the furthest planet, which is why it took the longest to transit a sign and therefore had the symbolism of time. There were other themes around Saturn: delays, tests, structure, discipline, death. But I think a lot of that, if you flip it, there's no delays in time. Time just takes time. So there are no delays in your Saturn path. If you think that you're going to meet the love of your life when you're 21 and you have Saturn in the 7th, okay, then you might think, I'll have so much delays in love. But if you take the time limit that you have on yourself, that you've put on yourself, Saturn just takes time. There are no delays. Just takes time. It takes time to build worth for yourself. It takes time to build boundaries within yourself. It takes time to feel confident enough to speak up. It takes time to build your career, wherever Saturn is. It's just teaching the lesson of time. And the one thing that I speak about this in the workbook, and honestly, I was very, very brutally honest about my life path and what I have done wrong. because I really want to help people, especially as Capricorn risings. If you are aware of astrology and Saturn, I wanted to write this from a really honest, brutal part of me, because I have like, until the last year or two, I never did what Saturn wanted me to do. For a good part of my life, I didn't know. And then once I did know, I was able to blame. So I blamed Saturn instead of being like, oh, Saturn was teaching me to be authentic and set boundaries, and I never did. And now I'm learning that. And now I'm moving through that, realizing what my lessons were. So I was really, really honest in this workbook that I wrote. But anyway, the reason I say that is because if I didn't think of it in a way of like, why isn't everything working out for me? Instead, if I thought about it as, oh, what can I be dedicated and devoted to? I think my life would have been a bit different. And that's okay. I'm here for a reason. I'm speaking for a reason. I do not regret anything. But I think in my 20s, I was so bad. I was so hard on myself all the time because I thought life was against me. I thought I wasn't getting to places. And, you know, I also write in the book about someone I know who's a Capricorn rising who knew what they wanted and stayed devoted to it and dedicated to it. And they built a really beautiful life for themselves before they turned 30. And then their love life came later in life. They were, I think, 33 or 34. No, maybe like 32 when they met their partner, and 35 when they were married, and 36 they've had a child. So, you know, that might look late in life for others, but if you put no limit, no time limit on when you want to achieve certain things, time isn't an issue and time isn't a delay. We put our own like limits on stuff. I would say to myself, I want to earn a certain amount by the time I'm 28. I want to live in my own apartment by the time I'm this age. But I didn't have a goal. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was trying to push through instead of listening. And if instead I didn't have that limit and I just thought to myself, okay, what do I want to do? Like, what's the long-term plan? Like, where do I want to see myself? And I could have taken time with that. You know, this is alongside your work. This isn't something, I'm not saying do this instead and drop everything. But alongside that time, instead of having this huge limitation within yourself, think of it as like, okay, I have so much freedom now. What can I learn? What can I do? Where do I want to go? And when you get really real with yourself, and I talk about this again in the workbook, which is like, you have to be really honest and do the Plutonian thing of ask yourself the deep questions. Once you're aware and you've done that kind of inner healing within yourself, you can really answer those questions truthfully of like, what do I see my life being and where do I want to go? And stay devoted and dedicated to that, and Saturn will reward you. But chase the quick fixes, chase the things that are not aligned, and it will feel you're constantly hitting a wall. But my issue with Saturn, and when people talk about Saturn, it's not that, like, you know, Saturn will come later in life. That's seen throughout history. But it's you that have put the limitation on yourself, the frustration that you haven't achieved a certain goal when you're 23, 24. And that's purely, honestly, I believe, because of social media. It's put this unrealistic goal on a lot of people, and that's not their life. But I also believe you have autonomy over yourself. You are able to say to yourself, what do I really want to be devoted to? And show up for that. And that is Saturn. Saturn's not saying I will never, ever reward you. Saturn, naturally, if you're a Capricorn rising, you do age backwards. You are the Benjamin Button of the sign, like it is just what it is. But if you put the limitations of time like away from you, it creates so much freedom within your body, because the limitations that we put on ourselves are from society. Be married at this certain point, have this house, you know, do this, retire at this age, whatever. But if you had none of that, what would you choose? What would you do? So that's understanding Saturn. Now, Saturn as your chart ruler, where is Saturn placed within your chart? That area of life, that house that Saturn is your life path. That is the area of life that you need to work on the most. You need to be devoted to that area of life. If Saturn is, for instance, in your fourth house, there's always this space of like not fully feeling safe. You feel like you aren't home. Anywhere you go, you're chasing homes a lot, might be this energy. But the real lesson is just knowing that you are your home. And this is where inner safety, nervous system regulation, this is where grounding lives. Like, this is the home of your ancestry, your like physical home, but your roots, your inner home, your inner self. This is where the feeling that you're chasing that might make you feel like you're whole is actually within you. It's not through a person, through a career, or through another destination. It's within you. And that's Saturn's lesson. And often things will be stripped away from you until you learn that lesson. And this is genuinely the whole reason why I wrote the workbook, is because I was so tired of feeling for myself that nothing was working out for me. Everything was leaving me. And I have a first house placement. And when you do have a first house placement, it does naturally, especially if it's like an outer planet, or if it's Chiron, or if you're living in the wounded version of that planet, it will naturally ricochet through the whole chart. So when I was writing this workbook, I resonated with every house, Saturn in every house. And it's because I have a first house Saturn. So if I'm not authentic and true to myself, if I am not I don't give a fuck about what people say about me, this is who I am, and these are my boundaries, and this is what I'm working towards. If I am on the right mountain, everything else works into play. But if I am the wrong mountain, if I am on the wrong hill, mountain, whatever you want to call it, if I am on the wrong path, the rest of the houses ricochet off that. So that's why friendships would fall. That's why your career would fail. That's why money wouldn't come to you. That's why you just don't feel at peace. It's because you're on the wrong mountain. And if you honestly are a Capricorn rising, this genuinely probably would play out quite similar to your life. Because yes, Saturn, where Saturn is in your chart, if say for instance you're a Capricorn rising and Saturn's in your 7th house, that your massive thing would be relationships. That would be a part of it. But because you're a Capricorn rising, it does filter through the houses. Not as much as if you were a Capricorn rising and had Saturn in the 1st house, but it still has that energy because Saturn rules your life path. Where your chart ruler is within your chart also can show you what area of life you might work in. That's quite a superficial way of looking at it, but because it is the area of life where your chart ruler is, it can show what area of life is the focus, and then there could be work within that. So for instance, if you're Mercury ruled, if you're a Virgo or Gemini rising, and let's say Mercury is in your 9th house, you like the emphasis on teaching, the emphasis on being a mentor and healing is like very big within your career path. So for instance, that could be someone who teaches, uses their words. That could be someone who writes. That could be someone who has a YouTube channel because they're getting to distant lands through the internet. But it's always using your words, your voice of some capacity, because you are Mercury ruled. With Saturn, the foundation is truth. If the foundation is not true, it will fall. Eventually, at some point, it will fall. This is why a lot of the time they say with Saturn in the 7th house, you either will marry late or you might be divorced. Saturn in the 7th could be an indicator of divorce. And the reason is because if the marriage is not built on truth, true values within each other, you know where you're going. If you have not had those true conversations, that's Saturn basically saying this isn't true, it will crumble. And I don't think Saturn's a hard planet at all, and I don't think it's a hard planet to be ruled by. It's just a difficult planet to understand. Once you understand it, then you can be like, oh, it's pretty clear. Worth, truth, devotion. But if you don't know those things, it can be really difficult, because you're like, what the hell does Saturn in my 8th house mean? What the hell does Saturn in my 12th house mean? And I've read all the books on Saturn. I've read Liz Green's book on Saturn, which was really eloquently written. I've watched an abundance of YouTube videos, and I've studied it within Hellenistic astrology. And still, I felt like it wasn't clear on the lesson within the house. So I had to do my own work, my own research, my own understandings. I've read so many charts with Saturn in lots of different areas, and I've come to my own conclusions, what that looks like through lived experience. And that's why I wrote the book. Not for you, in honesty, it was for me. I wanted to understand what Saturn was and the archetypes, try and change the archetypes. I didn't want to pray to Kronos. I wanted to understand why Saturn was named after Kronos, and there was a confusion there, because they used the Greek myth of Kronos rather than like the god of time, and they kind of, it's a misinterpretation back then that now we use Kronos. It was a misinterpretation or a misunderstanding of those two entities. And through my own work, I'm like, oh, okay, so there's texts on Saturn actually being a feminine planet. Capricorn is actually a feminine sign. It's an earth sign. Water and earth signs are feminine signs. That doesn't mean they don't have polarity. It just means that they are a feminine sign. So I really understood Saturn deeply through my own work that I did. And then when I wrote that, I was like, how would that show up in a first house? And then how would that show up in the second house? And it kind of evolved into something that I've been able to put out there for you. But originally it started with me because I was like, I need to learn my chart ruler. If you're not interested in astrology, you wouldn't be watching this video. So you're interested in astrology. So you need to learn about your chart ruler. You need to learn what your chart ruler wants from you. And I'm not going to write a workbook for other chart rulers. I'm going to write it for Saturn, because I am Saturn ruled, and that is my lived experience. And I want to be as truthful and as honest as I can within that. So that is why I wrote that. But if you are Venus ruled, go find someone else, because I'm not going to do that. But I will tell you where Saturn is in your chart and where you might feel like time is taking time,